My name is Tina Curry, and I'm here from the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. We just changed our name to OES. We had been the California Emergency Management Agency for a couple of years, so just wanted to point out the name change in case you hadn't heard. But what we're here to talk to you, what I'm fortunate to be here this morning to talk to you about, is the emergency management component of the adaptation strategy for the state of California. And emergency management is probably like it sounds. Our job is to get ready for, respond to, and recover from disasters when they occur in California. And doing that is by nature collaborative, because we have an office that works on this full time at the state level of government, but we can't do what we do without the Resources Agency, without CAL FIRE, without DWR, agriculture. All the people that are here talking to you today about climate adaptation are the ones we work with every day to get our job done to deal with a disaster. So again, we're fortunate to be at the table. We see what we do as part of capturing the latest data, science, and just what we know about risks to California lives and property, and do a better job in getting ready for those eventualities that will occur, such as more fires, more floods, just greater impacts of these things to our population. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at Cal OES, how we're contributing to this conversation about climate adaptation. But most importantly, what we're here has been said by all the other speakers, is to hear from you all to make sure that we do the best job we can do in developing this strategy that we're putting together, this updated strategy for California. Let's see, forward. Oh, too intuitive, the arrow. So again, we understand that what we have in California is a lot of risk. We have earthquakes here, we have fires here, we have floods. Many of you saw we had a very significant rim fire down the Yosemite area that fortunately we've come around the corner and are looking at containing that. But those are things that we are faced with in California all the time. We also see that these risks are expanding, and climate is a driver for that. So we need to think about, we have great systems here. We have first responders. They know what to do. They take care of people, take care of property. But it's our responsibility to look at those risks as they increase and figure out how we can lessen the effects as much as we can on people and property on our way of life here in California. Some of the things that we're aware will be happening because of climate are more storms, more flooding, landslides, sea level rise, coastal inundation, impact to our levee system, which is already very fragile, prolonged heat and drought situations, and more wildfires. So how is us in emergency management responsible for coming together to deal with these things when they happen, but also plan for them? How do we need to change our planning focus to address the risks of climate is what we're focusing on. Again, it's by nature collaborative. We already do what we do through the work of a lot of other agencies, and that's just at the state level of government. We work also with the federal government, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, as a lot of people are familiar with. By extension, the federal government family. We work with other states all the time, and we support local government and, by extension, the communities that they serve. So what we do has to transfer to all those different levels. It's not just about the state of California, but it's also about tools that are useful, even down to the individual person and what actions they can take to prepare for hazards and mitigate the effects of them. There's also a terminology explanation that I always insert when I'm talking about climate, just because it is what it is. It's one of those statutory things that we haven't addressed yet, but it can be a little confusing. Hazard mitigation in the climate change world has often been looked at, or mitigation, as the reduction of greenhouse gases, the prevention of this particular hazard. We're here to talk about adaptation. How are we going to deal with it? How are we going to lessen the effects? There's a term that's used in the emergency management world, in my world, called hazard mitigation. That is about lessening the effects of disasters. It's a term that FEMA uses. It's going to be inserted. I'll just put it out there. It'll be inserted in our presentations because it drives a lot of the doctrine that we are responsible for. But it is something that I want to explain so it's clear and less confusing than it might otherwise be. So just in terms of, very quickly, on the systems that we use, we have a standardized way of approaching disasters in California. If there's a fire and your city of Sacramento responds to it, they're operating in the same way that we would if it was a giant, conflagration or something large like the Rim Fire, or maybe an urban fire like we had in the Oakland Hills many years ago. So we've approached disasters in a standard way because we know that there's just too many things that are a risk to. It's too hard to tell when you wake up in the morning what might happen. So we've got to have a way that's commonly understood, commonly approached, and our first responders have been doing that for many, many years and have a way of approaching disasters that's common. We also have agreements with amongst lots of different sectors of the first response community, for example, fire, law enforcement, emergency medical, so that they don't have enough here in the city of Sacramento to respond to it. They have a pretty dialed-in way to call in help, and it'll come from neighboring jurisdictions first, and then it'll expand. We can go to other states, to the federal government if it gets big enough. So we have a surge capacity that's built into emergency management. But again, and that's just a pragmatic way to approach it. It's been working for us for years, but it's still our responsibility to understand that what our risks are and try to drive down that risk as much as possible. So we don't have an infinite supply of our first response resources. 2011 has been tagged as the costliest year for disasters across the nation. We had a lot of tornadoes, a lot of storm events. Superstorm Sandy just kind of blew out all the record books in terms of disaster costs. So we know these are getting bigger. So we can't just sort of fall back and say, well, we have mutual aid. It'll take care of it. Because if you think of the exponential effect of that across communities, across states, across the nation, we have to find ways to, at a minimum, understand the risks and how the impacts of these disasters are worsening, and ideally to buy that down, to make sure that we're still protecting lives and property. There's things we can do before disasters occur to lessen their impact. We've taken some actions by putting memorandums of understanding in place. I'm glad you brought up the question about have we looked at laws and statutes and what might change. We have a pretty flexible system, at least for the sector that I represent, that enables us to work broadly with the private sector, work with communities, basically do what we have to do to plan best for disasters, understanding our world and environment is changing. But we do need to take a look at, there has been over time kind of big sea changes in approaches to disaster management. We went from, kind of basically a kind of civil defense approach back in the 1950s that changed to reflect natural hazard focus, maybe more around the 70s. So, it has evolved, and it's our responsibility also to look at what changes we need and not limit ourselves to what we have, but also look ahead at what we might need. So that's part of this process. We have plans, contingency plans for extreme heat, for extreme cold. We faced that. We had a very significant heat disaster in California. I think it was back in 2006 where we lost a lot of lives. Caught us a little bit by surprise in terms of the impact of that. So we developed some plans on how we mobilize, how we we work with the Weather Service, know that it's coming, and start getting the messaging out to our most sensitive and vulnerable communities, and make sure that the state government's taking protective actions to make people aware of an emerging problem. Same thing with extreme cold. So we've already seen these trends going back a few years, and we've put plans in place, and now we want to see what more we need to do. We have an emergency plan for the state of California that is very broad-reaching. It's something that all our communities in California will reflect in their own plans, and it's very adaptable. And again, a part of us being at the Cal OES, being at the table with this forum, is to make sure that this information is transferring into the documents. There's a lot of information out there. There's huge responsibilities that are on the shoulders of these state agencies, and our goal is to work together to make sure that we're all reflecting what's needed in our various areas of responsibility to address the impacts of climate. And I will hone in on specifically a document, or an effort, I should say, that Cal OES is responsible for. And here I'm going to use mitigation, but it's called the State of California Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. It's something that we update every 3 years or so, and it has reflected as much as we knew about climate adaptation going back since 2007, I believe. And so we've worked with my fellow agencies every time this is updated to make sure that this description of California's approach to risk reduction in the face of the disasters that that we're at risk at, quite frankly, here in California, is encompassing of the most up-to-date knowledge that we have, the most up-to-date strategies, and what it is that everybody's doing about all these different disasters that we're at risk to. So this latest update, which is being done in concert with this adaptation strategy that we're talking about today, will reflect all of the information and, in fact, link to the strategy once it's completed. So, again, we're wanting to transfer this information so that every time a user of one of these documents sees it, they can understand that we work together to develop the different segments, and they're all reflective of one another. So our state hazard mitigation plan will be something that Cal OES deploys that will reflect the adaptation strategy for California. We see disaster risk reduction as something that's distributed all the way down to the individual level. So when I go home after my job, I've got to talk to my kids about disaster risk and what we've done in our household to get ready. So really this is a shared responsibility, and we really spend a lot of time trying to educate the public to see what part they can do, because distributed, then this is something that we can all manage if it's done at all levels. One of the tools that we've deployed is something called My Hazards. This is a very straightforward, simple website interface where all you need to do is know your zip code or your address, and automatically, using existing data that's already out there and being updated, a individual or a school or a business can see what risks they face. But beyond that, it also includes information on what they can do about it. For example, if I live or work in a floodplain, I type in some information about my location or whatever facility I'm concerned about. It'll also tell me what to do about living in a floodplain, whether it's getting flood insurance or understanding what actions I can take to be prepared for that risk or what have you. So it's more than just say doom and gloom. These are all the bad things that could happen. It talks about what you can do about them. So again, distributing that preparedness message so that the individuals can take actions too. As science emerges, this is developed in sort of a general format, so whatever science and data we get in the future, we can just add to it. So right now it's got information about fires, floods, and earthquakes. As climate science emerges, any of these scientific studies or data that we're talking about down the line, maybe there could be 20 different platforms that are in here, but the individual has the same place to go, sort of a one-stop shop, to seek that data and steps they can take to deal with those hazards. We have another tool that we've deployed that is more for planning organizations. So if we're a city organization using City of Sacramento again, same concept, but what this does is gets them to the commonly available data that is applicable to the area of their concern. So that'd be the boundaries of the City of Sacramento and all of the infrastructure and population that is within that, and helps them develop their plans with a little bit easier access to data rather than having to get that themselves. So again, we'll continue to update this source. It's the same source that we provide for our public tool, but it gives communities a little bit easier access, a little more straightforward approach so that they can spend their time developing the plans for addressing their hazards and less time, hopefully, trying to gather the data that backs that up, because we can help them with that. So we're trying to deploy tools that are useful across the board, that are useful to communities. We don't see our job as just a state layer of government. We see our job as statewide. So we want to have these things available. And I think I'm coming around the corner here. The Adaptation Planning Guide was already mentioned. We're very proud of this document. This is a joint venture with Resources Agency and some other entities. And this was, again, along the lines of Cal OES's approach, taking information that we're aware of, scientific data, studies as they come out, and figuring out a way to import those into tools that planners can use. So we wanted that anyone who is out there updating their disaster plans or their development plans or whatever local government needs to do, trying to make it as easy as possible to transfer the scientific information into their planning tools. So just make that process a little bit more pragmatic for them. So we got a lot of feedback on this document. It started out as one big giant toolbox and then was broken down into several components that are hopefully more manageable. But that was a direct result of feedback, like this session that we're having with you all. And we were receptive to hearing that because we want this to be used. And you can go see this on the website. It's on the Resources Agency website, but it's very, hopefully easy to use information on how to take climate adaptation and incorporate it right into planning. It's got regional information, it's got sector information, it's broken down into components, again, to make it hopefully as easy to use as possible. So we're very proud of that. And again, just a little description, visual of recognizing the different regions. There's different things that different places of California are a risk to. You're concerned about sea level rise if you're on the coast. Central Valley's got different concerns. We're very diverse in our geography, our distribution of population, our values at risk. So again, we broke this down so that wherever you are, you have a kind of usable data that's for the area that you're concerned about. And that's all I have for the formal presentation. Presented a lot of info. I talk really fast, so I want to slow down and listen to hear any questions that you may have or any feedback you have for me. Again, we look forward to being part of this process and hearing from you all so that we have the best input we can possibly have, not just for our chapter, but across the board for the entire process. Is there a question?
Hi, Adam Smith, Southern California Edison. I really like the climate adaptation planning guide. Thank you. I found that very helpful. Went through it about a week or two ago. My question is about the My Hazards tool. Is that similar to the CalAdapt thing that you guys have online? I'm just generally wondering, is it utilizing the same data sets, that kind of stuff, or is it kind of a different thing?
It shouldn't be. As far as the data sets, we're relying on CAL FIRE maps for fire, the USGS and Geologic Survey for earthquakes. So to the extent that we have a source for data, and those are similar to what's on CalAdapt, we're not creating our own.
Oh, gotcha. So My Hazards is more historical. And
it's current. For example, it'll have the wildfire risk map for California that we get right from CAL FIRE. I don't know whether CalAdapt off the top of my head has that too, but it wouldn't be a different data source that we're going to from the different. One of the things is to make a commonality. Those are updated already by those agencies, so there's no need for us to recreate that effort. We just want to present in a usable way for the audience for that particular website for My Hazards what's already there.
Gotcha.
So yes, the intent is for it to all be the same source.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
My name is Steve Euler. I'm a citizen. I'm interested in command and control, in particular radio communications. And various agencies assure that their radios will actually work together. It appears that maybe the firefighters we lost was due to a radio issue, and it may be revolve around something called narrowbanding. Various agencies may have bought new radios, think that they're all okay, but they were dual mode radios, and have they all been reprogrammed? Is everybody thinking that it's already been done? Has it been actually proven that they've already converted? FCC apparently doesn't do anything other than tell you to do it and then enforce afterwards. So is there a mechanism that makes sure that the agencies are really seeing that all of the radios will work together?
Yep. At Cal OES, and working with our partners, we put a lot of effort into what we call interoperability, and we see communications as twofold. There's a technical component to it, and then there's a people component, actually communicating. So we work very hard not only to keep up to date as much as we can with technology, make sure that interoperability, are things all going to work together when we have a large event where a lot of agencies are working together. So I can probably offline, we can talk more about that as well if you have more questions. But yes, that is tested and exercised, as well as we're planning for just emerging technology all the time with our partners.
When you say tested,
Yeah.
Can you actually produce an inventory that shows that the programming, the reprogramming, which apparently was missed, was actually done? Because this was all supposed to be completed by the beginning of 2013.
What I can do is put you in touch with our technology folks that can link you to, what data we have available on their schedule and their updates. It's not my area of expertise, but I know that we have staff. Maybe I can get your contact information after the session, and we can follow up on that for you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much.